On Election Tuesday, one of my favorite days of the entire calendar year. I look forward to Election Day and watching the results throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening, and into the wee hours of the night with the same zest, the same vigor, and the same passion that I do March Madness and the NCAA men's basketball tournament. A lot we're going to cover on today's show. We're going to discuss potential cause and effect of Election Day and the results that may transpire with Alex Urpí, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services, in minutes. A lot of folks predicting, experts in the field, a red wave today. If you were in Albemarle County and in Charlottesville, Central Virginia, when you voted, and if you notice, I'm moving my mic, look at my chest, a sticker on my chest. I voted this morning. My wife voted this morning. We brought our 4.5-year-old son. He waited in line with us. He went into the voter booth with us. He helped us take our ballot to the turn-in station, collected the sticker, and we walked out. We did the entire Election Day experience with our 4.5-year-old in tow, and our soon-to-be son, who is now due 16 days from now in my wife's belly. Growing up, my father and my mother brought my brother and I every single Election Day to the voting booth. It's a phenomenal opportunity for moms and dads to educate their children, the next generation of voters, of the importance of voting. And this is not about Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or Socialist. This is about our duty, our rights, our freedom to vote. Never take for granted freedom to vote. My mother is Cuban. She left Cuba months before Castro took over the country and strong-armed Cubans into a communist regime. Mima and Papi and my mom went from a strong middle-class lifestyle to Miami, Florida. They took everything that they could fit in backpacks on their shoulders and went from Cuba to Miami, Florida, where my mom was put in the 3rd grade without being able to speak a lick of English. Mima became a hotel maid, and Papi a ditch digger. They went from an upper middle class lifestyle in Cuba to Miami, Florida, because they valued freedom. They realized that leaving their home that they owned, assets that they had worked hard to accumulate in Cuba, leaving their house and these assets was the way to go, because freedom in Miami offered more of an opportunistic life for my mother, a 3rd grader, than a communist regime in Cuba. If Mima and Papi, my grandparents, had not have made that decision, my brother and I would not be alive today. My mother was put in 3rd grade without speaking a lick of English in English-speaking school in Miami. When you bring up this memory to my mom today, she gets emotional because she was ridiculed mercilessly in this English-speaking school by students who made fun of her because she could not speak the language of America. My mom persevered. She learned the language, and she eventually graduated from community college. My Mima and my Poppy worked their asses off as ditch digger, then a barber, and my grandmother as a hotel maid. That hard work was undoubtedly a point of emphasis for my brother and I. Never take for granted the fact that we as Americans can get up every single day and not worry about stuffing our most prized possessions into a backpack and then leaving our country for another one for the sole reason of pursuing freedom. We have benefits and opportunity in the United States of America that other countries across the globe, across the world, covet. Please vote and encourage your children to do the same. Okay, a lot to cover on today's show. The shops at Stonefield, we will work in conjunction with them to roll out a designated outdoor refreshment area. I have news that's fresh for you to relay in a matter of 60 to 90 seconds. We will also, on today's show, try to guess 2 restaurant listings that are anonymously for sale. These restaurants are not being sold through my business brokerage business. They are listed anonymously online, and we will try to use context clues to guess the restaurants. We'll put photos on screen. Photos from the listing. We'll highlight the copywriting from the listing to try to guess which ones are for sale. Also on today's show, we will discuss the fact that Charlottesville City Council has decided to extend Michael Rogers of the Robert Bob Group and their contract, the interim city manager, through December 31st of 2023. Yes, the hired mercenary city manager, Michael Rogers, his contract extended through December 31 of 2023. Now, if City Council chooses to hire a city manager before then, the new hire will take precedent over the hired mercenary. Still, I doubt that will happen. Michael Rogers will now help City Council through another budget season. Michael Rogers will also be counted upon to hire a police chief for Charlottesville, Virginia, a position that's remained vacant for about a year now. And speaking of police chief, Rachel Brackney, former police chief of Charlottesville, now suing the city for wrongful termination, claiming she was fired because she was a black woman. She is up to her shenanigans and tomfoolery on social media yet again. If you recall, Chief Brackney was a finalist for a police chief job in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She did not get that job. I'm not surprised by that. Not surprised by that. When you're suing your former employer claiming wrongful termination, that doesn't make you a likely candidate to hire for future jobs, especially since the city of Charlottesville, their strategy for managing Rochelle Brackney's lawsuit is pretty much just ignoring her. Over the weekend, Rochelle Brackney posted a video of a police officer in his vehicle, his squad car. It's clearly a Charlottesville police officer, and this police officer is speaking to the camera. I will say it's not a good look for this police officer. It's not a great look. You can find this video on her Twitter account. It was done 3 days ago. Her Twitter account is @ChiefB_CVille PD. And this officer is just talking to a camera, almost talking to himself, offering a monologue. Chief Brackney then offers this with the video she tweeted. Oberhoser, which is the officer's last name, who is now a police deputy in Augusta. Here's a video of him that opened Pandora's box, exposing the Charlottesville Police Department and SWAT. Brackney also hashtags Charlottesville and says, "When I said I had receipts, what part did you not understand? ? Then Brackney tweets this, "Tick-tock, tick-tock, more receipts about to drop." And then she tags NBC 29, CBS 19, Dave McNair, Joy Ann Reid, and the hashtag, this is how sisters move. NBC 29 ignored Chief Brackney. CBS 19 ignored Chief Brackney. I haven't seen anything from Dave McNair about the tweet whatsoever. Joy Ann Reid, has she done anything about this? I don't think so. I've watched this video, which is less than 2 minutes, a couple of times. Does it make the officer look good? It absolutely does not. He does not come across as very professional in this video. I don't know what he was thinking doing this video. Is this video criminal or nefarious, or is this video leverage for Chief Brackney? No, it is not. Chief, come on. And the threat where she says, "I had receipts, what part do you not understand? Tick-tock, tick-tock, more receipts about to drop." Chief Brackney, former Chief Brackney, your lawsuit has been going on for months now. The storyline is stale, and the people that you're suing aren't even responding to you, they're ignoring you. If you have ammunition that you are about to drop, the time has passed for you to drop it. Please drop it. And if you don't drop what you have, the leverage you have, can you please just leave the city of Charlottesville alone? This is making you look bad. I can't be more straightforward than that, Chief Brackney. I got news about a business moving to the downtown mall. Decades Arcade is moving from the Cathy Shopping Center over there by Belmont Pizza to the downtown mall. That's good news for the downtown mall. Decades Arcade is pretty awesome. In fact, I'll be going to a birthday party there in a couple of weeks. One of my son's friends is having a birthday party over there. Decades Arcade is this... How would you describe? Have you been to Decades Arcade? Can we go to the two-shot, Judah? Welcome Judah Wickhoward to the program. A+ people.
I've never been there.
It's how would you describe? It's I guess the quintessential arcade where you could play pinball and Pac-Man. You know, and the Mortal Kombat games. I guess it's like the arcades of the 50s. Well, they say it on the website. The arcades of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. The interesting part of Decades Arcade, which I find really cool, is it's not a quarter. It's not quarters anymore. It's more of like an entry fee.
Interesting.
And then you can go and play for as much as you want. The owner of Decades Arcade is a arcade enthusiast, and he wanted to share his passion for Decades Arcade to the community. Children people 4 and over, it's $12 admission. And then you could have a private party for up to 50 people for $300. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Decades Arcade is moving to the downtown mall. That's some breaking news for you. Decades Arcade is going to make this move in early next year. They will honor their private parties and keep the arcade open throughout 2022. I think it's positive. I'm curious of your take of having businesses on the downtown mall that are not tied to music, food, and restaurants. I think these experiential businesses that are not just tied to wining and dining and live music are a positive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it gives people more things to do on the downtown mall, which is always a plus. And yeah, I could see it being a great addition to the slate.
Scott Aaronworth will reach out to Mayor Snook and get him back on the show. I just saw him walk by. Mayor Snook had a fresh haircut. Friend of the program. Tremendous respect for Mayor Snook. Carol Thorpe is watching the program. She's the queen of Jack Jewett. She says this, in my opinion, I don't think Dr. Brackney is genuinely pursuing these positions with the intention of getting hired. She knows that they won't hire her, but is instead racking up evidence for her lawsuit against the city, that they have damaged her reputation and compromised her policing career. It's a leverage play. That's an interesting take. In fact, I'll respond to Carol Thorpe's comment right there. Carol Thorpe, very interesting take. Period, enter. Thank you for commenting. There's some that's an intelligent take right there. So what the Queen of Jack Jewett is saying is Dr. Brackney is applying for positions knowing she will not get this job as for further ammunition or leverage for her lawsuit against the city of Charlottesville. Wow, that is a strategic take right there. That very well could be happening. Carol Thorpe. That is a strong comment from you. I'm going to give Carol some props. You can watch the video on her Twitter account if you choose to watch it. Paul McCarter, the king of Southside, I think he would make a phenomenal school board candidate. Says Decades Arcade is great. Juan Sarmiento, who's the king of transportation, the lead technician in the Charlottesville transportation fleet. Says Decades is great. Katie Pearl says, I love hearing stories of other Cuban immigrants. Growing up in Miami, it was the background of my childhood for myself and all of my Miami classmates. Katie Pearl, I love you. You're the queen of Whitehall. We love when you watch this show and comment and interact. My brother and I, in fact, I spent the first 9 years of my life in Naples, Florida. My grandparents eventually moved from Miami, Florida to Naples, where my brother and I were born in Naples, Florida, and I went to school through the second grade in Naples, my brother through first grade. But we have extremely vivid memories of spending time in Mima and Poppy's backyard. My mother and my father were entrepreneurs. My dad was a CPA, retired now. And my mom ran the front part of the business where she interacted with the clients. And they were grinding. Like they were working legitimately like all entrepreneurs do, like 60, 80, 90 hours a week. I mean, during tax season, I saw my dad maybe 2 hours a week, January 1 to April 15. And that was generally on Friday evening. We would meet for a pizza at Sal's by Victor in Williamsburg. And my father, we eventually moved to Williamsburg, Virginia. He sold his first CPA practice in Naples, Florida, then sold another one in Virginia. But when we were growing up, I'd never see my dad. So Mima and Poppy would raise us. And when we were in Florida, before we moved to Williamsburg, I have vivid memories of spending time in the backyard of Poppy's house and Mima and Poppy's house. Mango trees everywhere. We'd go in the backyard, and he'd always have a pocket knife on him, Poppy would. And Poppy would go into the backyard. He'd cut a mango off the tree. And literally in the backyard, he'd peel the mango, and we'd bite into the mango, my brother and I, as Poppy proudly pulled it from the tree, peeled it without even washing it. I mean, it wasn't even rinsed off. And then sliced the mango in his hand and gave my brother and I like a slice of mango. And it was just like the quintessential, like, freshest fruit. And still to this day, when I bite into a mango, I get nostalgic and think of Poppy. And I remember in that same backyard, Poppy, because my mom and dad really didn't start raising us until we were in middle school because they were working so hard. So Mima and Poppy were the ones raising us. And I remember in the backyard, Poppy throwing baseballs to my brother and I. Baseball is as a part of Cuban history as black beans and rice, as Cuba Libres, and as mangoes are. And he'd toss baseballs to us in the backyard. And my brother and I would take batting practice as kids from Esteban Gomez, throwing fastballs and cutters to us. And it was just beautiful, man. It was absolutely beautiful and tremendously influential, watching him go from literally digging ditches and then eventually being a barber as his body gave up and did not allow the physicality of ditch digging. He then transitioned into barbering. And I'd see him come home and he'd be like, come on, let's go in the backyard and let's play some baseball and eat some mangoes. And it, you don't realize, because at the time, Mima and Poppy didn't have that much money. In fact, Mima died first. Poppy died much later. And Mima and Poppy, when he died, had $20,000 to his name. That's it. $20,000 to his name. He died in his 80s. And he left $10,000 to my brother and $10,000 to me. And he earmarked those $10,000, and we could only utilize it for college tuition. Couldn't utilize it for anything else. And when you're growing up, you don't realize that you're growing up poor when you're kids. Like we just didn't know that Mima and Poppy didn't have much money. That backyard felt like Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium. And those mangoes felt like they were mangoes from a mango farm. They didn't feel like it was a backyard on a plot of land that was, 0.1 of an acre in a house that was like 850 square feet. That's why like Election Day is so important to me. Because I saw what my mom and her family went through for the whole pursuit of freedom. Couple of other things I want to get to on today's show. I want to talk about the DORA, the Designated Outdoor Refreshment Area that's coming to Stonefield. The DORA establishments are Burger Batch, Burton's, Matchbox, and Torchy's. Those are the ones as of now. So you'll be able to buy booze at Burger Batch, Burton's, Matchbox, and Torchy's. And you'll be able to sip and shop. It's being branded as Sip and Shop across the shops of Stonefield. And, we'll cut to the chase. The shops of Stonefield, they need a little bit of life, a little revitalization. It's really a beautiful shopping center, but the rents are expensive. And because the rents are expensive, a lot of locals cannot afford it. And because a lot of locals cannot afford it, you get a lot of big box brands at Stonefield. And because you get a lot of big box brands in Stonefield, you're having a difficult time getting locals to engage with the shopping center. I think that's fair. The big box brand shopping center works in a market like Short Pump in Richmond because it's massive in size. And you have a lot more people that are willing to visit this shopping center because of this critical mass of people. Charlottesville and Albemarle County aren't that large. And because they're not that large, you don't have this base of customers. So Stonefield is doing what it can to localize its brand. And what Stonefield's going to do is utilize this designated outdoor refreshment area, this DORA, to frankly compete from an experiential standpoint. You're going to see a lot more live music at Stonefield. You're already starting to see, live events at Stonefield like farmers markets and holiday markets. You're going to see more experiential opportunity at the shops of Stonefield. And as you do, the critical mass of people will increase. And my concern for the city of Charlottesville is they are not innovating at the same clip that Albemarle County is. Albemarle County has opportunities that are arising left and right. Fashion Square Mall, for example, is literally being revitalized before our very eyes. I mean, heck, there's a carnival in the parking lot of Fashion Square Mall right now. Like, legitimately a carnival. The city of Charlottesville, I hope, will continue to innovate. And I think the designated outdoor refreshment area downtown is a very good idea. I hope that City Council will realize that it's being passed by. Danville, Virginia is doing a designated outdoor refreshment area. Norton, Virginia is about to roll out. Norton, Virginia has already done a designated outdoor refreshment area. And the city of Charlottesville, this innovator, hasn't done one yet. So my hope is council will rise to the occasion and do one. A couple of other items from the notebook, and then we'll get Alex Urpí. Meriwether Lewis is going through a rebranding right now, or they're talking about it. Meriwether Lewis is an elementary school in Ivy, Virginia. And here's the very interesting thing. The vast majority of parents want Meriwether Lewis to stay the same. The name to stay the same. Overwhelming support for keeping the brand the same. Still, Albemarle County Public Schools is choosing to move forward with a rebranding survey and now call it a chatter scenario where they're going to brainstorm potential names like Owensville Elementary or Ivy Elementary School. This is what I don't understand. If the large majority of parents want to keep the name the same, why allocate the opportunity cost of time and money to pursue a rebranding effort? And I also encourage many folks to just consider the Meriwether Lewis history. The history is not necessarily one of it just seems like other things should be prioritized now. That's my point. Test scores are struggling. Transportation issues are prevalent. Teachers are quitting. You have fighting and assaults within ACPS, and morale is extremely low. Prioritize what needs to get done now and consider some of these other options later. Why don't we get Alex Urpí in the mix? Alex, why don't you come on, and then we'll get a three-shot here and talk election. First, I want to also guess these restaurants. Before we guess the restaurants, we'll get Judah Wickhauer to go on a two-shot with you to get you in the mix. Election day. Anywhere you want to go to start?
This is going to be an interesting one. From a market perspective, certainly the market tends to like divided government, split government. In other words, when the House and Senate, or even just the House, is the opposite party of the president, I think from the market's perspective, less bad ideas can get passed. And that's kind of the purpose of the checks and balances there. So that's looking more and more likely. The House, I'd be very surprised if the House does not turn red. This side, though, the Senate is pretty much up for grabs. And obviously the presidency is blue. So if that ends up splitting, I think we will probably see the market at least be pleased with that fact, because there's a number of other, you could argue, headwinds that might discourage the stock market. But I think in general, the market is going to say, all right, we at least have an idea from a business taxation and regulation perspective what to expect for the next 2 years with the divided government. In other words, you're not going to see sweeping regulatory or tax changes once that happens. That kind of stability is what you typically expect when you end up with a split government.
I would. Is everything you're reading saying red wave here?
I mean, it's House. Absolutely. I would come here and be stunned next Tuesday if I come back here and the Republicans have not retaken the House. That one is looking very likely. The Senate, the problem is there are so many things that are toss-up at this point. Even seats that previously would have leaned blue are now, I saw in the Real Clear Politics average now in toss-up category. So when you have something like that, you could end up with a red wave of all. If everything goes one way, you end up with a red wave. If everything goes the other way, you end up in the same Senate picture that we're looking at now. I'd be surprised if the Democrats pick up seats in the Senate, given where the numbers are looking right now. But
have you fixed his audio, Judah?
Yeah, his audio's fine.
Okay, because people are saying that his audio is off.
Maybe I'll...
Multiple folks are saying that. Is it fixed now?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. All right. Let's make sure that's on, please.
I can do like the old Verizon guy. Can you hear me now?
They got you now here.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we're hearing the knowledge that he has to drop here. The House is going to go red. Mm-hmm. Senate, depending on what you read, is neck and neck. I mean, as close as a race as you could possibly potentially get.
Well, and the interesting thing about them, because there are 5 or 6 extremely close races, if they all go one way, you end up with what looks like a red wave. If they all go the other way, you end up with a flat, like back to 50-50, which is just a very interesting scenario because you have a lot of close ones. No one's running away with any of these races, but every single close one could go in one direction or the other, or they could end up splitting. Some go red, some go blue, these toss-ups. And then you're sitting there with a very, at a 51-49 Senate.
The economy's in a tough spot. I mean, vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe the best description. I'm very concerned that next year is going to be worse. The job losses generally start at the top of the totem pole. Facebook's laying off thousands. Mm-hmm. Apple's got a hiring freeze. Microsoft's laying people off. Snapchat's laying people off. All big tech is laying people off. Mm-hmm. Once it starts at the top of the professional totem pole, it tends to trickle downward.
It'll move downward.
And it starts affecting Main Street. And by Main Street, I mean, our friends and families' businesses. We are a bit insulated here in Charlottesville because of the University of Virginia, but we're not completely or 100% protected from stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm. And we're insulated in certain industries, but not necessarily in every industry. In other words, if things begin to decline from a standpoint of consumer spending, right, that will impact Charlottesville, we're not going to be shielded from a decline in consumer spending, right? Inflation, we haven't been shielded from inflation here in Charlottesville. You might see certain industries, perhaps housing, right? You might see certain industries very well connected to the university procurement system that can weather the storm better than others. But industries that are reliant on consumer spending are not going to be shielded just because they were located in Charlottesville.
So here's the question I have for you here. I think the number one voting point is the economy and inflation. Mm-hmm. I think the next level of voting is going to be schools. In Charlottesville and Albemarle and Central Virginia, we had one vote on the ballot. We had the U.S. Congressional, Throneburg or Good. Mm-hmm. Going into next year, 2023, is really the nitty-gritty from a local standpoint. Take Albemarle County, 3 seats on the Board of Supervisors, 3 of 6, 4 on the school board, 4 of 7.
Which is basically, that's a complete change of the school board.
Potentially. I know the Albemarle County, the teachers that are leading the charge to unionize in Albemarle County with its public schools, they're going to back 4 candidates for the 3 district spots, Whitehall, Rivanna, and Scottsville, and 1 candidate for the at-large spot. The teachers are doing that currently of organizing candidates that they want to run. I think we're truly are going to see school and local. City Council's got 3 of 6 up for election. Fluvanna's got spots up for election. Local going into next year, November of next year, a year from now, literally a year from now, is really what we're going to see from an impact standpoint in Central Virginia. Mm-hmm. How do you see the trends or the voting topic lines manifesting or continuing into next year? Do we think it's still going to be economy, or do we think it's going to become more social issues? In years past, it's been social issues. Mm-hmm. Now it seems to be the economy in this election. Will that economic economy trend continue into next year?
Next year on a local standpoint. It's interesting. I'm not sure it will continue such that it will dominate schools. Schools have basically dominated the discussion going back to last year's gubernatorial race in Virginia. So schools, I'm not sure the economy, because there's only so much, if you think about it, that people tend to attribute local government to their economic circumstances. In other words, if we're looking at a national recession next year, you're not going to be seeing people expect the local government to solve that issue. If we're seeing massive inflation next year, you're not going to be seeing people turning to local government to solve that issue. Now, you might see it from a tax perspective. In other words, if there are big divergences in one candidate wants to raise property taxes, the other one doesn't, right? You might see that there from the perspective of people saying, well, I can't even afford my current expenses. I can't possibly afford any type of more taxation, right? But I think from a local perspective, given just the trends I'm seeing in that for locally, schools tends to still dominate the discussion that I see and hear, I'd have a hard time thinking that the economy would trump that on a local level. On a national level, on a state level, it's another question entirely.
I think going into next year, slightly disagree with you. I think going into next year that this is what I think is going to happen. Mm-hmm. We're going to have incredibly sagging retail sales, meals sales, and lodging sales. Retail and meals tax in particular are going to be down. Mm-hmm. And Albemarle County, last week, Donna Price of the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors, she said in the Daily Progress, she said during the Board of Supervisors meeting that we are definitely going to have to raise the real estate tax rate.
See, if something like that happens, that's going to be part of of the discussion next year. That's going to have a big impact.
And Albemarle County is literally, the supervisors are telling us now they're going to raise the real estate tax rate on us. And it's pretty far behind the city of Charlottesville for what they charge per $100 of owned real estate. So if Albemarle County raises the real estate tax rate during a recession, Albemarle Countyans are going to be really stretched with their disposable mm-hmm. income. And then I think that could potentially still resonate come this time next year with voting. I also think education is going to be big, like you said, But I do think at the local level that the economy is going to be a hot button issue because the jurisdictions are still archaic in how they run the municipality in that they're taxing rooftops and taxing rooftops to keep the jurisdictions afloat. You know, they're not prioritizing like economic development. I'll ask here's a good question. Who can name the last Albemarle County or Charlottesville City impactful economic development initiative? You too, Judah, you jump in here. Viewers and listeners, you as well. Anonymous on Twitter, the fantastic handle that interacts with us, has this comment. If Stonefield is entirely private streets, does that mean the designated outdoor refreshment area has the advantage of being able to keep out the homeless and mentally ill? It's a good point in that Stonefield has more say and autonomy of who can be on the private streets than the downtown mall. If you do a designated outdoor refreshment area on the downtown mall, downtown is literally considered a public park by definition. Like, downtown mall is a public park. That's why you see homeless, mentally ill much more prevalent in downtown Charlottesville and not so much in Stonefield. Stonefield's got private third-party security that can pretty much alleviate or ask to leave the homeless and mentally ill. You don't see homelessness in Stonefield. You do downtown. It's a fantastic comment by Anonymous via Twitter. I want to go back to my original topic here. Who can name the last truly impactful economic development initiative by Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville?
I can't think of it.
Judah, you got any?
No, I don't have any.
There's my point.
Yeah.
You got three really smart people here that are struggling to come up with the last economic development initiative that Albemarle County has led or the city of Charlottesville has led. Viewers and listeners, I'm asking you, what are the last economic initiatives and economic development initiatives that either Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville have led of recent years? Albemarle County very cleverly attracted Willow Tree to Woolen Mills from the city of Charlottesville, but that was years ago. That was legitimately years ago that Willow Tree opened up its campus in Woolen Mills in Albemarle County. Mm-hmm. Over the last 24 months, someone give me an initiative that the city of Charlottesville or Albemarle County have done that have truly had economic impact development. Kevin Yancey's highlighting the Omni Hotel. That was Kevin Yancey. Omni Hotel was a great economic initiative development.
Omni Hotel has been here since
decades
ago.
Yeah. Decades ago. Literally decades ago.
I guess maybe that's his point.
Yeah.
That's probably his point.
His point.
His point is that the last thing you can think of is decades ago.
Right. So, viewers and listeners, this is a conversation for a cocktail party. What was the last economic development initiative that Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville have done that has truly been impactful? Heck, I'll even say in the last 36 months, the last 3 years. I mean, let's try to just go. Let's go by quarter, like Route 29.
Route 29.
I mean, Stonefield has been there forever.
Stonefield's been there for more than 3 years.
We got empty shopping centers left and right.
Absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, on 29, there's a number.
A number
and
of them.
And even into now, right? Because it's not like Home Depot has shown up. The Fashion Square Mall is still. It's not like it's picked up tremendously.
No. And the county didn't lead Home Depot to buy Fashion Square Mall.
No.
Home Depot did that on its own because it's all opportunity. Paul MacArthur, you could help me on this here. Kevin Yancey, Andre Xavier, Travis Hackworth, Carol Thorpe, Scott Aaronworth, Katie Pearl, Janice Boyce Trevelyan, John Blair, Neil Williamson, anyone watching this show, Anonymous on Twitter.
It's funny when you say like the biggest economic development initiative, right? The only one that actually comes to mind is the one that didn't happen, which was the only one is the brewery from several years ago that never actually came.
Deschutes Brewery tried to open at the Route 29 southern corridor by Virginia Eagle. Albemarle County couldn't figure that deal out. In fact, that was the first time I spoke in a public government setting, was in favor of bringing Deschutes to that spot. Deschutes ended up going to Roanoke. Ironically, Deschutes Brewery has since closed since moving its East Coast headquarters to Roanoke, because the consumer is now prioritizing neighborhood, truly local breweries, as opposed to second locations from Deschutes, Oregon, that happen to be in the Roanoke Valley. I want to legitimately ask that question. Andre Xavier, I'm asking you as well here. You're a very connected man. Albemarle County as a jurisdiction and Charlottesville City as a jurisdiction. What in the last 3 years has either government done from an economic development initiative that has had a significant impact? Anything that come to you, J-Dubs?
Does the bridge count behind the pavilion?
I don't think the Belmont Bridge construction would drive economic activity. In fact, you could make an argument that it could hinder economic activity.
In fact, I think it has.
Barbie's Burrito Bar.
From her and others.
Barbie's Burrito Bar says people can't even find her, and her business is getting convoluted and impacted negatively by dust from the construction. Carol Thorpe says likely Stonefield from about a decade ago.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So I guess that's my point, and I'll throw it to you here. My hope is, come this time next year, November 2023, Albemarle Countyans start prioritizing candidates for Board of Supervisors that emphasize economic development initiatives that take the taxing pressure off of home ownership. Andre Xavier, the king of transportation, makes this comment. Personal property taxes went up 26% last year. 26% last year. Assessments went through the roof in Albemarle County. The city of Charlottesville, at a time when personal property taxes went up 20% plus in the city of Charlottesville, the city of Charlottesville also chose to raise its real estate tax rate while real estate assessments also went up. So if you owned a car and owned a house, you got taxed more by the real estate tax rate, you got taxed more by the assessed value of the house, and you got taxed more by the assessed value of your vehicle. You're dying the death of 3 cuts.
Yep. And remember, the issue with that is that from a housing affordability perspective, your house going up in value does not help your cash flow.
It's paper value.
It's paper value.
Which is meaningless in a recession.
You're not going to sell 1/100th of your house to get a little more money so you can pay your property tax bill. You're stuck there, and you can reach the point where you sit there and say, I can't afford. I've heard of some people who have told me, I cannot afford. I have a house, which is paid for, but I cannot afford to live and pay the property taxes, because the cash flow is just not there. You end up the classic land rich, cash poor scenario, where you're sitting there saying, yes, it doesn't help me that the house that I've been living in for 30 years is worth $1 million now, because I'm not going to sell it, and where do I go?
In fact, you can make a legitimate argument that paper value increases can actually cripple you in a recession.
Ask any farmer.
There you go.
Their paper value increases
can cripple you.
Can destroy the entire farm.
Can destroy the farm because you can't afford the taxes on them. Paul McCarter is a smart man. He literally says, I cannot think of a single economic development initiative in Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville over the last 3 years. He says, the best I can think of is 5th Street Station. That's the king of Southside. He would make a great school board candidate, Paul McCarter. Curtis Shaver.
Speaking of recent years, though, I think, was it Yancey that commented that, we do have to take COVID into account. The fact that we haven't done a whole lot in the last 2 years.
So we're just going to take 3 years off because there was a pandemic and we're going to do nothing?
I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I don't think that's legitimate at all.
Okay.
That's basically offering an excuse for government to do nothing.
Both the city and the county did receive COVID funds that they utilized
Tremendous.
to help businesses stay afloat.
Yeah.
But they received those from exterior.
Not from themselves.
Not from themselves.
It was not generated from themselves. Curtis Shaver, Curtis, you're the king of headiness. The king of headiness recently engaged to a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gal. He says 5th Street Station or Wegmans. And that was years ago. 5th Street Station and Wegmans were in place when I was still living in Southside Charlottesville. I've now been on Southside Albemarle County. I've now been on Eastside Albemarle County for almost 3 years. In the last 3 years, I'll even make it a step further. I'll take it a step further. What has Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville done from an economic development initiative in the last 5 years? Anyone? Viewers and listeners, you guys are super intelligent. The last 5 years, what has Albemarle
Would
County?
Fifth Street Station fall in the 5 year?
I'll do a quick.
window?
No, I think it's past 5 years. I picked the 5-year marker because I'm quite confident that
It's
was
outside there.
before it's outside the 5-year marker. I'm going to go to CVillepedia. It was approved by the Board of Supervisors in 2008.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
5th Street
It took
Station
a while to get
was approved in
going.
2008. The zoning was approved by the SUPs in March 2008. Timeline for the project. Wegmans opened in 2016,
Wow.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a conversation starter for you. Albemarle County and City of Charlottesville. Hold your elected officials accountable.
Well, and it ties into a lot of what we were discussing last week, which is that at some point, you cannot continue to rely purely on real estate taxation to fund your budget.
It cripples.
You are going,
it gentrifies.
Well, and we are seeing that you are running, as the university too gets bigger, you are running out of taxable land. Like at some point, you don't have taxable land, so you are just putting more and more pressure on the few people remaining whose land you can tax.
The university, he's exactly right. He's a smart man. The University of Virginia is gobbling up real estate. And when it buys real estate like Ivy Square Shopping Center, Foods of All Nations Shopping Center, it takes the real estate off the tax rolls. And as an entity, an enterprise, the university has what? What's the endowment? 14, 15, 16 billion dollars. Can you look up the University of Virginia endowment? It's billions.
Yep.
I would say it's 14 billion or above.
I think that's what I'm remembering from last week when we had you to look it up.
University of Virginia endowment,
Yeah.
14 billion or above.
I think we saw that they were down, but as of last year, I think it was about 14.5 billion.
14.5 billion. So this is my point here. Here's my point. And Alex is, and we'll play Guess the Restaurants here. People are asking us to play Guess the Restaurants. We absolutely will. This is my point. Anonymous, I love you, Anonymous. Anonymous sends this on Twitter. Anonymous, you're making the show better. We have our deep throat for the I Love CVille Network is called Anonymous. The University of Virginia exempt holdings in Charlottesville is $1.6 billion. 1.6 billion with a B.
Yep.
The University of Virginia exempt real estate holdings in Albemarle County are $1.9 billion in real estate holdings.
Yep. And you can't
Think about that.
You can't blame the university for growing.
Oh, I
Or
don't
just
blame
the
I don't blame
university's
UVA for doing that.
Yeah, it's the university's incentive. As it gets bigger, it will grow,
Yeah.
and it will purchase land
100%.
to do this. The challenge is, we as a city and a county need to be able to look at that and say, all right, this is what is happening. We cannot just rely on the same old method of taxation because that method is going to be dwindling. You have to respond to the scenario. We did all wish it wasn't the case, but you have to respond to the scenario that actually exists before you.
Exactly. That's why I'm going to make and I feel like this has been a very well outlined argument or presentation. that if we don't start prioritizing candidates for local elections that emphasize economic development initiatives, we as a constituency are going to be left bearing the weight of the jurisdictional overhead, and that weight is going to fall on the rooftops that we own. Mm-hmm. And the folks that are on the financial margin, the elderly, retired, the unemployed, the medically disabled,
basically anyone on a fixed income is going to be hammered.
Is going to get ravaged.
I don't think it's just going to be them, though.
No, no, not just them. But
call it anyone that teachers,
anyone basically whose
police,
wages do not keep up with the increase.
And right now it's pretty difficult to do so.
Pretty much everyone at this point,
right?
I'm not aware of anyone whose wages have increased commensurate to inflation, to appraisal increases, and therefore to the increase in their tax rates.
Which professions has wages that are keeping up with overhead jurisdictionally? I mean, the C-suite of finance?
If that. I mean, we've seen what's happening with tech companies layoffs. I doubt those tech companies are increasing wages at the same time they're putting hiring freezes.
Exactly. There's an excellent point right there. Even the super deluxe companies aren't doing it. So what is the collateral damage? You know what the collateral damage is? This is the collateral damage. And I'll cut straight forward and to the chase for you guys. The collateral damage is in Albemarle County and a city of Charlottesville that is rich, super deluxe, wealthy people.
Pretty much that's what happens. It just consolidates further. Well, and the interesting is
Greenwich.
The collateral damage increases the speed, of course, because as homes go for sale that people can't afford to live in Charlottesville and Albemarle, guess who goes in and might be incentivized to go buy them? UVA. I mean, could you blame them? They say, oh, wait, this is for sale now, very close to the university. I'll buy that.
This is how we become Greenwich, McLean, Georgetown, Fairfield County, San Francisco, Boulder, Vail. This is what's happening. We must prioritize economic development. These elections truly impact us at the local level way more than a federal election will. I have a lot of topics that I want to get to about Alex Urpí. I promise Scott Aaronworth will get to the restaurants here. Let's go the first one. Did you take a look?
I did. These are tricky ones.
I truly don't even know what they are.
I'm not quite sure myself.
Okay, let's go first with Judah. We have the business listings from LoopNet, right?
Mm-hmm. Which one do you do first?
Why don't we go with the deli?
The deli.
I'll read the copy. So these are on LoopNet. Judah, why don't you post the business listings on my personal Facebook page comments? Do it on the ACES computer if you could here, please. On the comments of my personal Facebook page, the comments of I Love CVille and the I Love CVille group. Those 3 pages. I'm going to read the copy and then we're going to play Guess the Restaurant. I do not have these listings with my business brokerage business. I am not tied to anonymous or client confidentiality here. Here's the headline for the deli. Deli and restaurant for sale in Charlottesville, Virginia, with $481,000 in sales. Here's the business description. Don't miss your chance to purchase this landmark deli and restaurant for sale in a high-traffic Charlottesville, Virginia location. In operation for 40 years, this cheerful, immaculate restaurant and deli with a loyal established breakfast and lunch following boasts excellent and upwards trending sales. Get on this turnkey operation today. This restaurant and deli brought in $481,000 in sales in 2021 and is on track to do well over $500,000 in 2022. And you know what the best part? It's an independent. There are no royalty, advertising, or transfer fees to eat into your profit. The deli and restaurant for sale currently operates during breakfast and lunch hours only. That's a big clue. And is closed on Saturday and Sunday. Also a big clue. A new owner can increase sales by extending operating hours and offering weekend service. There's also much additional copy, but that's the nitty-gritty. The asking price is $159,500. Gross revenues, they're projecting over $530,000 this year. Year established 1982, and the rent is a little over $4,000 a month. Do you got a guess? And Judah, do you have a guess as well in Delhi?
That's the tree. I couldn't think of a deli who's not open on Saturday and Sunday.
I have a guess. Do you have anything you guys want to add?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I remember the current name. It was, what was it, Boneyard?
You're talking about the lunchbox. Holly's Diner.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
That's the one.
Holly's Diner's open on the weekends.
That's the only one I can think of.
I think it's Tubby's on High Street. Tubby's on High Street has been in operation for an extended period of time, I believe 40 years. If you do a quick Google search, Tubby's on High Street is not open on either Saturday or Sunday. Tubby's on High Street closes at 4 p.m. during the week and prides itself on breakfast with a 6 a.m. opening. Tubby's is not a franchise. Tubby's has the lineage and legacy. Tubby's is a deli, not open on the weekends. I think this listing is Tubby's on High Street. And Kevin Yancey, you're right. The photo is just a stock photo. You're exactly right. So really,
I
there's
doubt they would put actual. Yeah.
no need for us to show the photos. And that was me who showed the photos. I won't show the photos there. I believe it's Tubby's on High Street. If you could share those links in those comment sections so people can see it. Judah's doing a darn good job today. A bang-up job. Have you been to Tubby's?
No, I've not actually.
It's very
I
good.
wasn't familiar with that one.
The asking price is $159,500. What do you make of an asking price of $159,500 with gross revenues of over $500K?
That's telling me, again, it all depends on the multiple. That's telling me obviously costs are very high as well. They're not. They're never going to tell you net profit, right, on a sales pitch, but it's telling me costs are very high because a multiple of 2 on revenues. You're not even close to that number. I mean, a multiple of 2 on gross profit. On net profit would give you $50K. I mean,
you're at a multiple of almost 3, aren't you?
No, with
159 ask, 531 gross.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the asking. The asking price. The gross is 3 times the asking price.
Yeah, gross is 3 times and change.
3 times the change of the asking price. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if the asking price is 2 times net profit.
You're saying it's too high.
Yeah, that might be. No, well.
I'm saying this asking price is not equivalent to what gross. If I'm brokering this deal for a buyer, I'm saying your asking price for something like this needs to be in the vicinity of, or maybe the bottom line for something like this has got to be in the vicinity of 80 or 90K.
Given the gross.
Yeah, given the gross. And the tricky part with these businesses, a lot of them are cash-only businesses. Another thing you got to ask, and this is what I've encountered with doing business transactions, particularly restaurants. The ones that are cash-only, they like to say come transaction time, oh, our numbers on paper are not truly indicative of what we do sales-wise. And then I call BS on that.
That's the problem. That's the issue with cash.
Yeah.
In other words, yes, you can save yourself. This issue with cash as well as with expensing things, right? In other words, as a company, you can always find additional expenses to reduce your tax burden, decrease your profit on paper.
Cell phones, vehicles, trips where you're doing research to make your business better.
Exactly.
There's a lot of opportunity.
There's a lot of opportunity, but that comes back to bite you if you need to sell, because the potential buyer is not going to give credence to that. The potential buyer is not going to sit there and say, "Oh, well, yes, of course. I'll just assume that your net profit is twice as high as you actually reported on your taxes." No, the potential buyer is going to say, "What you have on paper is what I'm going to base my offer on."
I mean, that's what I would do. Mm-hmm. I would not advise any of my clients to make a deal.
Curiosity, as someone who brokers these, what's a typical multiple of net profit that you see?
Depends on the business.
Depends on the business.
The restaurant business being so crowded, and with labor being so tight and short staff right now, and in this inflationary time where people are less apt to eat out, that multiple is very tight.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a business that's tied to take your business. You don't have cost of goods. Take my business. I don't really have cost of goods. We're not carrying heavy payroll. We're not selling widgets.
No, it's over.
Our widgets don't wither like lettuce and tomato and meat.
No.
And we're selling essentially a client list, right?
Essentially.
You're selling a client list.
And in ours, you're essentially selling ourselves in a sense. The assumption is going to be we're going to make the transition.
And that's also the really tough part about selling a business like that.
Yep.
Because Emergent Financial Services, much like VMV Brands, is the Urpís, is us.
You see it all the time when a financial services firm sells. The primary of that firm is locked in to work there for the next 2 or 3 years.
Transition.
There's a handoff. There's a transition.
That's how my dad sold his CPA firms.
It has to be.
He had to transition with the new owners so that the clientele didn't get scared and leave.
And leave, of course.
And that's a difficult aspect of selling this. I got a guy that's coming to me that wants to sell his therapy business. And I'm like, not to speak too much out of turn, the clients come to talk to this therapist. Does that mean he's going to transition and be the room with the future therapist that buys the business? This particular individual doesn't own the real estate.
Yeah,
so what exactly am I selling here? Now, take Moe's, which I helped broker on Ivy Road. Moe's had established sales, been there for a long time, and a food truck was included in the deal. So there was very tangible, they didn't own the real estate, but they owned this food truck. And they had the franchising rights to the territory.
So exactly. That's
tangible asset that they could sell. It's a very difficult brokering business. Let's go to the other business, Judah. If we can get that. In fact, we don't need to get the photo. The headline is "Stunning Restaurant and Bar for Sale in Charlottesville, Virginia." The asking price is $229,500. Gross revenue is $332,000, and the rent is $12K a month. Established in 2002.
This one surprises me more than the other one. You have lower revenue, but a higher asking price. The only thing I didn't think of is that there's an assumption of greater margin there because of the alcohol, but that's a tough one.
This says, and the link is in the feed. 2002 establishment. Current owner spent $1 million to create this casual eatery. Good God. Full service bar. Established in 2002 is a huge tipping point. Gorgeous restaurant and bar for sale. Desirable Charlottesville neighborhood. Premium furnishings, lighting, decor. Hand-built bar. Top-of-the-line kitchen equipment. Offer for $229,500. Turnkey and ready. If any item can be prepared. Fully equipped kitchen. Steaks, burgers, chops, seafood, side salad, pizza, mozzarella stick, wings. If I had a guess, and I don't have any intel on this is just a guy that follows this really, really closely. I think this is the Piedmont on Pantops.
Oh, that's
the old Shadwell's.
Yeah, the Shadwell restaurant.
I think this is the Piedmont on Pantops that's for sale.
That always had a nice interior.
The interior
I never went to the bar part, so I wouldn't know about the bar.
Oh my God, it's sexy.
Oh.
Everything was rebuilt. It's completely sexy. I think it's
because it did get completely renovated.
It's sexy. It's absolutely sexy. I think this is the Piedmont on Pantops.
It's an interesting one.
What do you guys think? Judah, do you have a guess?
I do not have a guess. I think you're probably a lot closer than I would come.
Anything you want to throw?
I'm with Judah on this one.
I think this is the Piedmont on Pantops. Pizza, wings, steaks, fully equipped kitchen, completely rebuilt, 2002 established, rent $12,000. You know the rent at that place is expensive. I think this is the Piedmont neighborhood. They call it a neighborhood place. That's very much billed as a neighborhood restaurant and bar. They emphasize the bar portion. The Piedmont has its own side bar. It was a steakhouse before becoming Shadwell's and then Piedmont. I think this is the Piedmont.
Interesting. So that's considered a neighborhood, even though, because I would have thought that's more of a business area. Because you got the hotel, and then you have all the business suites leading up to.
And you got the neighborhood across the way. Pavilions at Pantops.
Oh,
It's
across
very
the
much
street.
billed. Ashcroft is there. Cascadia
Okay.
is there.
Yes.
It's very much been billed as a neighborhood bar. They try to go after Glenmore. They try to go after Keswick. I think that's the Piedmont. What do you think, Scott? What do you think, viewers and listeners? Did you share the link in all the feeds, J-Dubs?
Both
did?
the links, yeah.
What are the viewers? Any
Curtis, what do you
guesses from
think?
them?
The chef, the king of headiness. Curtis, what do you think? What do you think that is? Juan Sarmiento, what do you think? Scotty Aaronworth, Kevin Yancey, Carol Thorpe, Katie Pearl, Grayson, Spencer, Bill. What do you guys think this is? Anonymous, what do you think this is?
Is it fair to ask Anonymous? He probably knows who it is.
Anonymous, do you know what it is? If you do, what do you think it is?
Our deep throat probably already
Paul
knows.
McCarter, what do you think it is? Thomas, what do you think it is? I think that's the Piedmont. I think a lot of times I've been in the Piedmont and hadn't been that busy. What do you think it is, Lauren? Andre, what do you think? Stephanie Rhodes says they don't have steaks. The hubby was disappointed. They did have steaks at one time, though. Stephanie Wells Rhodes lives in that area. In fact, she's very close to where I live. They did have steaks at one time. The tough part about the Piedmont, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone, the tough part about the Piedmont is it's extremely expensive.
Oh, the food in the restaurants.
It's
I remember its
extremely
predecessor
expensive.
being expensive.
Is that what you remember as well, Stephanie? The menu being extremely pricey? I remember it being very, 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 very expensive.
The rent might have a lot to do with that.
Julian says Timberwood. That's a good guess, Julian.
Ooh.
That's a very good guess. It would have to be 5th Street Timberwood, Julian. She's the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fiance of the king of headiness, Curtis Shaver. Because Timberwood North, Julian, they own the real estate. So it could be Timberwood Wegmans, 5th Street Station, but I would hope to God that Timberwood Wegmans is doing more than $332,000 a year in gross revenue. I do not think King of Headiness, it's Fry Spring Station. I do not think it's that one. I do think the Queen of Headiness, Julian, her guess, Timberwood, is a very good one. Mm-hmm. Timberwood, I would say the Piedmont one is my primary guess right there, though. Piedmont's my primary guess. Today, y mañana, and we're okay on time because I've been interacting with my client. He says that our conference call is a little bit delayed.
Oh, okay. No worries. No worries.
Because you were worried about that. Were you worried
I
on her
saw
behalf?
him. I'm like, is he good for his?
Thank you.
Your class at
You're a very
1:45?
dynamic man. He reads the room extremely well. His brain is, Mrs. Urpí, the Antonio Banderas of finance, his brain is always working and turning. My friend, today y mañana.
So 2 great guests, local businesses on Today Mañana. First, we're going to have Susan's going to join us from Cake Bloom. Great little bakery, beautiful wedding cakes they do right here. As well as Kenny Flowers and Deontay Anderson are going to join us from Flowers Anderson Electric. They're going to come on. So it should be a blast. We're looking forward to it.
Today y mañana, Thursdays at 10:15 a.m.
Continuing to highlight those, small businesses.
You do a great job. Small business highlighting. Stephanie, I agree with what you just said. She says, we don't like to knock restaurants, but when we went one time, they were extremely understaffed and it took forever. I can't figure out why a nice restaurant can't stay in that location on this end of town. I 100,000% agree with what she just said. In fact, I'm going to respond to...
There's been a lot. There's always turnover in that spot. I remember when it was the Steakhouse.
This is what I don't understand. And Stephanie makes a really good point. And Stephanie, that was our experience as well. Mm-hmm. The east side of Albemarle is extremely under-restauranted. You have Tip Top, which is amazing. You have Piedmont. You had Lilo's Pizza that closed. Mm-hmm. You have Applebee's.
Yeah,
the Chipotle on the east side of Albemarle County on Pantops is absolutely horrendous. You have Guadalajara that kills it there.
Yeah, Guadalajara is really the big one.
They stack paper there. Tip Top really stacks paper.
Tip Tops, yeah.
I agree 1,000%. With the disposable income that is in eastern Albemarle County and Pantops and Keswick, Stephanie, we have this conversation all the time. Why is it under-restauranted on that side of town, and why are the restaurants struggling to stay open on that side of town?
Part of it's the setup, I think, a little bit. In other words, that's very strip-like with just the way that 250 runs there, and he's got all the car dealerships lined up there. I'm wondering how many people that are in that area just go straight downtown whenever they want to eat.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Are people looking to distance themselves from Pantop's traffic and navigating Pantop's because it's not easy to cross the intersections?
I mean, it's a fast, it's the 250. It's a fast 45, 50 mile an hour road with a lot of lanes, car dealerships on one side, offices on the other for the most part. No, car dealerships on both sides. What am I saying? I'm wondering if that just doesn't lend to
the restaurant
a lot
ambiance?
of restaurant ambiance, unless you're going to Tip Top or Guadalajara, which I think have more established bases. Like people go there because they've been going there for a long time and they really like those two restaurants. I mean, I know that's what brings me to Tip Top.
Tip Top's killing it. Tip Top Terry doesn't own Tip Top anymore. Not owned by Tip Top Terry anymore. That's the show. Today's show was dynamite. This is long-form content which you cannot find anywhere, uninterrupted by commercials, and frankly, just talking about the community. That's all we're doing is talking about Charlottesville. I would very much encourage everyone that's watching the program to please, 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 please vote. And if you leave today's show, leave with this question. Leave with this question. From an economic development standpoint, what has Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville done in the last 5 years of influence and impact? What have our local elected officials done in the last 5 years to drive true economic development impact for Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville? For Alex Urpí, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services, and the jack of all trades, the senior project manager, Judah Wickhauer, my name is Jerry Miller, and this is the I Love CVille Show. So long.
Oh, thank you. Fun show today. Yeah, I was noticing, like, oh man, I hope I'm not pushing him.